The House Democrats circulating this letter to stop or delay the roll call that would make President Biden the nominee. Although quieted, these concerns are still there. What do you make of these developments?
I think the clock is running. I think time is running out. And here's the big question, Marnie. The Democrats who are raising these issues, they simply don't have the leverage to force Biden out without a floor fight at the convention. Nobody certainly wants that. But Biden's got to release his delegates, and right now he's all in. And then, his strongest argument is, look at the polls. Notwithstanding Trump's, the assassination attempt that Donald Trump survived, and notwithstanding that they're in the middle of their RNC convention, many of the polls are showing a dead heat or one or the other within 2% of beating the other. And so he's got an argument there. The reality is, this race being as close as it is, it's going to come down to get out the vote. Who's going to mobilize their base, get them to the polls nationwide, and especially in swing states? Because I don't think the numbers in the polling is going to change. You've got a mental acuity and age issue with the Democratic candidate. You have a credibility, integrity issue, corruption and chaos and convictions with the Republican candidate. Both parties ought to be embarrassed about putting both of these candidates up, but it'll be up to the voters to whether they hold their nose or not. It'll be up to the voters as to which one of these candidates is going to lead the country for the next 4 years, unless they expire in the next 4 years, God forbid.
Yeah, heaven forbid. You're right, though, one in the margins. I mean, this is as close as it gets based on some of the polls we're seeing. The Republicans are really capitalizing, though, on the moment they have on the national stage right now with the convention. And the theme is unity, right? And after what happened over the weekend, they've done a pretty good job bringing everybody together, even those who have opposed former President Trump. The Democrats on the other side, Scott, as we're seeing, appear fractured. What's the optics of that and the challenge for them to bring people together ahead of their convention once they take the stage?
Well, the Democrats are always going to have a bit of a fractious contingency. I'm a former state party chair. I mean, getting everybody on the same page, it's always like herding cats with the Democrats. The Republicans are all about power. But the Republicans want to preach unity. The only unity I've seen at the RNC convention is that they brought in two of Trump's greatest critics to say, support Donald Trump because he's better than Biden. His own vice presidential candidate criticized him and suggested that he was the next thing or the next coming of Hitler. And so any of these arguments about unity after this assassination attempt, I think they're falling flat, especially when most of the attacks from the last couple of days of convention have been against Joe Biden. That's not preaching unity. They don't have to attack Biden. So that's a voluntary choice on their part. And so I think any assassination, any threat where your life is at stake is going to change you. The question is, how long is it going to change you? And at its core, Donald Trump is still a convicted felon, been found liable for sexual abuse and for financial fraud. And so American voters don't have any great choices here. So again, it's about mobilizing the vote.
And among their choices is thinking about what the future of the Supreme Court looks like, and Biden seeming to go down this road strategically in order to get term limits or a new ethics code in the high court. What hurdles would the president face, and what do you make of this political strategy at this point in the game?
Well, he certainly needs congressional support. He's not going to get that with the House and Senate makeup right now. That's the first thing. Second of all, he's trying to shore up his base. And right now, this issue with the Supreme Court, the Progressive Caucus and the progressive members of his party have been demanding this. And so there's no downside to him proposing this. There was a study committee or study commission on this issue of term limits and looking at the Supreme Court. Some of these recommendations, I believe, were in that report, but that report has been 2 years sitting on the shelf. And so he's trying to shore up the Progressive Caucus. That is, that term limits ought to be looked at. I'm a lawyer. The Supreme Court Code of Ethics, you don't want them being above the law. And between the Democratic appointees and the Republican appointees, this issue of Code of Ethics, especially with Clarence Thomas receiving $4 million in gifts from Republican donors over the years without or limited disclosure, that's troublesome for everyone. And if you look at the polling in regard to who believes in the Supreme Court, their credibility is way down.